So today we're here with Dr. Bill Parsons, and we're doing another episode of Perspectives of Veterinary Medicine.
So, my name is Billy Parsons. I'm a recently graduated in the last couple of years veterinarian. I operate in Eastern Kentucky in Carter County, and I am doing small animal medicine a couple of days a week. And I'm beginning to drive my vet truck around to do some mixed and large stuff sort of in the community around where I'm at. That's not really totally off the ground yet, but I'm very excited about it.
Excellent. What got you into vet medicine to get to this point where you're doing small animal and mixed animal? And was this a lifelong dream or?
Yeah, I actually really like that question because I think I'm kind of an oddball, but it doesn't seem that way at first. So, as a child, I was raised on a sort of a small scale farm. We never made any money with it, but we liked to raise a lot of our own food. My dad always had a dream of becoming a veterinarian, which he was never able to realize, but I didn't have maybe a great awareness of that, and it wasn't something that I thought about a lot. But I do remember lots of things like once when I was a kid, one of our dogs got a hold of a little young wild rabbit, and my dad rescued that rabbit and found that a significant portion of its skin had been kind of just peeled back real far, and it wasn't looking good. But he got brave from some of the James Herriot he'd been reading and his own inspirations, and took some purple thread and sewed that rabbit's skin
Oh,
back up
wow.
and then let it out in the wild. Now, you would have thought the thing would have just passed right then and there just from the stress.
Yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't very many weeks later when we spotted a rabbit hopping along the side of the hill, and you could see the little purple streak on its leg that told us that it must have been the one that he had done that for. And that's really stuck with me. And there are lots of stories like that from my childhood and kind of teenage life. And when I got to college, I was sort of torn between majoring in biology and history. History is something I've got a deep interest in, but I opted for biology because I felt like it would give me more options. And by the time I had graduated college, I had decided that vet school was where I was going to go. But of course, at that point, I had not had all of the prerequisites that would be necessary. I was missing a couple classes, so I had to get those taken care of after school. And then, of course, I hung around on the farm for a couple of years. So it took me about 3 years between after undergrad, to start applying for vet school. And I applied to Lincoln Memorial University. I was in one of their initial classes. I was the third or fourth graduating class, and they let me in. They called me up and said, "Hey, you're in," and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just go from undergraduate straight to vet school. Did you feel like that break helped you?
Yeah, at the time, I was very self-conscious about it because I was not falling into what was kind of expected of me. I got out of college and everyone was saying, "Where are you going to go? What's your next step?" And I didn't know. So I definitely felt a little weird being in that limbo space. But once I got into vet school, I began to value that extra time that I'd had to mature as a person, and kind of just it really affected me. I think how I went through things, and I was very pleased that it worked out the way that it worked out.
Yeah, good. Yeah, because I think I've seen that a lot where sometimes a little perspective can really help and just
Yeah.
ground you a little bit. When did you graduate? How many years ago was that now?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2021. I was supposed to be in the May graduating class, but there
Yeah,
was a little deferment with all the COVID stuff, so I didn't
yeah.
officially get all my requirements finished until about August. So 21, and that puts me about 2 years in now.
Okay, too. Well, because yeah, I started in 2010 and I just interviewed another vet and he's been practicing for about 30 years. And so this is interesting, just kind of hearing the differences of perspective. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. You kind of told what you're doing before, but mostly small animal right now. Is that pretty much right?
Yeah, that's accurate. I'm working 2 days a week at a small animal clinic in Flemingsburg, and we do exclusively small animal, almost entirely dogs and cats. And we do surgery, of course, all the preventive
Yeah.
medicine and emergency visits and that sort of thing.
Is that what you imagined in it, or is that what you wanted to do when you went to vet school? Or is this?
I love that question because I know how intimate you are with the answer to it. Definitely, small animals, not where I saw myself going. And when I was in my final rotations of school and talking to all the other mentors, in addition to you that I had, um, and folks started saying, "Hey, here's this job. You should think about taking it." I initially said, "Hey, I appreciate it, but there's no way I'm doing that. That's not my game plan. I'm going to do large animal. I've already got my truck. I'm going to start driving around. It's just what I'm going to do." But they wore me down and talked me into it and gave me a pretty good deal, basically. And I was able to go there and work and learn just a lot of stuff and really become a lot more comfortable with myself. If you had talked to me this time last year, I would have definitely had a substantial amount more apprehension about the position that I'm in and where I was planning on being later on. I definitely still want to move in the direction of the ambulatory medicine and get a lot more of that going on. And that's why I've kind of gone down to a couple days a week at my small animal clinic. But it really has taught me a lot, and I've benefited from it. And I don't want to leave it. I thought I wasn't going to want to do that, but I'm actually really enjoying it.
What do you think was the biggest thing for pushing you to kind of a small animal route versus a large animal route, if only temporarily?
There were a couple things. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a financial aspect to it, although I'm pretty resistant to that as a rule in my life. But so that was definitely part of it. I had ended up in a mentorship position that I was very comfortable in, and when those people offered me a job, it was pretty easy to transition into that, and that was appealing to me. And honestly, I said no a dozen times. So a lot of it was just the persistence of my employers and my mentors and the people around me saying, "Hey, you really should try this. At least figure out what's going on, and we're going to help you out and give you time to get your feet under you and get the things going that you want to get going." And it was just a really great support group kind of option there, and that allowed me to learn all those things that I was able to learn and still keep my eyes on the direction I want to go. And I think probably it has saved me a lot of the stress of just hopping in the truck and driving and hoping I got something done.
Yeah, yeah, that can be very stressful. I've been there, and it's not a bad route. Just get your feet under you and grow some confidence in yourself too. Kind of overall, not just where you are as far as your, because you have goals, get back to large animal medicine, and you're doing small animal medicine, but is the practice overall of medicine what you imagined it to be, kind of the day in day out, not necessarily right where you are, but when you have a patient in front of you, is it what you imagined when you went to vet school?
That's a really interesting question too, because I think it would depend a little bit on where in my vet school career I was at when I was thinking about it. When I first went to vet school, I got to be honest, I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into. I knew animals because I've been around them my whole life, and I've done a little bit of doctoring on them, but I had not taken a substantial amount of animal science courses. I had never worked with a veterinarian for any real length of time before I finally decided to go to vet school. Now I did to kind of get the requirements to go in, and that taught me a little bit too. But even that, didn't really prepare me for not just the financial burden that you take on when you go to school these days, but also the environment and culture that you're entering into. You're joining a club that's got values, and you got to learn what those values are and decide where you follow along those lines and support and further those values as well. And I think that was something that I enjoyed learning and getting a handle on that I was not expecting.
How about clients? How have they were they what you imagined working with clients?
Yeah, so working with clients is probably one of, and this may sound kind of odd because a lot of people go to vet school and they say, "Well, I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't want to fool with people, so I became a vet." I figured out very early on that is, if you don't want to fool with people, vet school is not the place to go. I actually really enjoy the client aspect of my job because I found that I'm pretty good at talking to folks. And just being able to get a handle on what their expectations are and what their desires are and what they're looking to get out of an interaction. And I put a lot of effort into making that part of the interaction a really important part of it. And there are the parts of me that are, we've got a patient in front of us, and there are things that we want to do. And in order to make that happen, you've got to sell that pet owner on all of your knowledge without being able to put them through 4 years of vet school to teach them
Yeah.
why it is that you're right. And that challenge, that kind of little puzzle for me, I have really enjoyed. I really enjoyed my professional skills training that I got at Lincoln Memorial University. I think they did a good job of that,
I
and
think
it did a great job of preparing me for some of those things.
I was going to say, I think you might be the first student who's enjoyed that I hear, but so one of the big issues right now in vet medicine is they're saying we need more vets, we need more large animal vets. They're even saying on small animal vets. You're coming right out of school. Do you feel like we need more vets? Or, you got a job? Are all your friends looking for jobs? Do they have jobs? Do they want more vets around or more staff maybe around than vets?
Yeah, I definitely recognize the shortage of small and large animal vets, although I think those shortages exist for wildly different reasons. The demand for small animal medicine is really high, and so it's hard to keep enough small animal vets around. The demand for large animal medicine is still, in a lot of ways, especially around here, kind of going down, but not as quickly as the supply of large animal vets is going down. And so that makes,
Yeah.
I think, with my limited knowledge, an individual large animal vet is a lot more needed right now. But people talk about that even around in my community, and I talk to folks and say, "Hey, I'm going to drive the truck around. I can see your horses. I can see your cattle," and they say, "Oh, great, we need a large animal vet here so badly. You're really going to do well." And I have to say, well, there's not really much in the way of money in that, which is okay
Yeah.
with me. The folks needing access to that care, and folks being able to afford access to that care, especially with the changes in standard of care these days. In
Mhm.
order for a veterinarian to operate at all, it's more expensive to do what we would consider, say, the bare minimum than it would have been 50 years ago. And cattle prices haven't gone up that much. And
Yeah.
that's causing a lot of issues as well, I think.
I think a good take on everything there. And sometimes I think some of the people making decisions about that should listen to some of the younger grads coming out and stuff. Kind of on that, because you mentioned price, or, it's just there's not the money to support some of the large animal vets. Have you found that you've been able to afford the lifestyle that you want in vet medicine? And you're right now you're doing it mixed. You've got small animal practice and
Mhm.
you're starting up your ambulatory. But do you feel like you're making able to make it work?
I feel like I am. That's the short answer to the question. The longer answer is that I'm in a unique position because of my lifestyle. My family, we live on a large farm, and we're working really hard to produce the majority of things that we consume. We want to produce most of our own food. We want to eventually produce electricity. We want to even produce our own water, and things like that mean that my needs are pretty limited. I don't have to pay rent. I don't want a new car to have a payment on. I don't go out and buy things. So my lifestyle is pretty limited anyway, and I think that makes me well suited for some of that. I don't want to say that anybody in veterinary medicine can live the life they want because there's plenty of money in it, because in a lot of ways there's just not. And as far as medical professionals go, we're definitely of the underpaid variety. But it works out for me, and I really like that niche that I found myself in so far. I'm hoping that I'll be able to.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think it's good to hear because I feel like the articles and press sometimes don't always focus on how people are doing okay, and it's what needs you have, and maybe not the society standard. And vets are good about going their own way sometimes. You've had a lot of positive things to say. And I think one of your favorite things is working with clients and figuring out puzzles, but with just veterinary medicine, whether you're out by yourself or at one of the clinics where you're an employee at, what's your favorite part and what's your least favorite part now that you've practiced for, a little bit?
Yeah, so probably right now, my favorite part is talking to people who are in a difficult position. And that's, it's hard to call it my favorite part because it's such a high stress situation to
Mhm.
inject yourself into. But when I find myself at the clinic and there are folks, right now I'm dealing with a client that's got a whole litter of puppies with parvo, and they're having trouble figuring out what to do and how to manage that
Yeah.
financially and emotionally. And it turns out they've been here before, and so there's a lot of kind of backstory to that, which creates trauma for them. And I'm enjoying being able to be there for them and talk them through a lot.
Through. Yeah.
Some of the things that I don't enjoy as much are, probably that same interaction where you really want to come up with a solution, but there's just not one that both fits the standard of care for an animal and the financial needs of the owner and the financial needs of the business that you're operating under, because that business has to be a successful business. You can't give stuff away to everybody, although maybe I'm a little more guilty of that than I ought to be. But I definitely struggle with some of the points at which the practicality of operating in a low income region, when that stuff conflicts with our ideas of standard of care and the ways that those are evolving, which is becoming consistently more expensive. In a lot of ways, that prices people out of not just livestock ownership, but pet ownership as well. And it's not that I don't think that all those pets deserve to have the absolute best care that they can get, but I do think that it creates a very difficult position. And it's not easy for me to just say, if you can't afford to have a dog, don't own one.
Yeah.
Although I do believe that that really takes a lot of people. It's like saying if you can't afford a house, don't live in one. That's not fair either.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something that we're going to have to deal with at some point is what medicine we're going to be able to provide for the prices, because I've heard you say that. I see that on a daily basis. It's, the different values people have, and of course medicine as a whole wants to raise the bar, but you can't raise past your clients either. To a certain point you can push them in the right direction, but you've got to meet them,
That's right.
and you can't always expect everyone to be, the ivory tower, as we would talk about the vet schools, and would want it and stuff. You've been out a little bit. Anything you'd like to say to your professors, stuff you're like, oh my gosh, I'm glad you told me this, or why didn't you tell me this?
So we had, and it's a couple of my large animal professors in school really did a great job of saying, here, y'all, we're preparing you for not only your licensing exam, but the world that you're about to be out in. And we want you to have a really good handle on those gold standard stuff, but we also want you to know where you're at in the practical world. And I found most of that in my large animal professors, and several of them were able to put you in a position and say, hey, ideally we would have these supplies on hand and we would be doing this procedure, but you found yourself in the middle of a mud pit with an animal that's doing this, this, and this, and this is what you've got. And you're going to do something because you're there and you're the only one who's there. And we're here to help you understand that medicine is about, not just about knowing what to do and when to do it. It's about being able to figure out, based on the knowledge that you've got and the things that you've done, how to get something done when you don't have the puzzle pieces that you should be able to just order off the internet and get that job done with. I
Mm-hmm.
really thought my professors did an excellent job of that, while at the same time being able to say, hey, look, they can rattle off all the bacteria and all of the physiology and all of the mechanisms that are at work under all of this stuff, and still be able to communicate some of the, communicate simply. And I really appreciated that level of practicality from the academic situation that I was in, because it makes me feel more comfortable. When you first get out of school and you find yourself in that position, maybe you're the one who's underprepared, maybe your client's underprepared, maybe the situation just couldn't be helped. And you look at it and you go, I can't do this the way that the textbooks say you need to do it. And it helps when you've got people who are real professionals in the field, who have done it for long enough that they're in a teaching capacity, who say, hey, I've been there too, and recognize that
Yeah.
it's you're practicing medicine and you do what you've got with what you've got.
Let me ask another question. Where do you think you'll be in 10 years?
Ah, that's such an exciting one because I dwell on it constantly. Of course, what young person doesn't, right? Um,
What old person doesn't too, I think.
Fair enough, fair enough. In 10 years, I would really hope that I've developed a good idea both of what I'm capable of doing and kind of exactly what I want to do. You know, right now it's all sort of vague dreams of hopping in the vet truck and driving to somebody's house and just doing whatever job needs done. And I haven't done enough of it to figure out what I'm comfortable doing and what I'm not comfortable doing and what I want to really, gear myself towards as far as the large animal stuff goes. I'm a little more attracted to small ruminants than I am to, say, equine.
Yeah.
And I would hope that in 10 years I would be, you know, maybe in some universe one of the better known small ruminant veterinarians in the region, and that's something that kind of excites me, the ability to
Yeah.
recognize that I'm actually a professional in the field. When I have a habit of saying you don't become a vet in vet school, I'm only I'm only just now realizing how true that is. And I would hope that I would hope that by 10 years from now I really am a vet.
I think just having that attitude makes you a vet. But in 10 years, you'll probably be like thinking of all the other stuff you want to improve on and get better. I think as we just as a whole, we're always trying to get a little bit better.
Right.
But that's good. And that's fun. Part of the fun part of the profession is there's so much we can learn and get better at and stuff. I think I've got the answer already, but are you happy with your career choice then?
Yes, I definitely am right now. I'm in a really good spot with it right now. And
Good.
like I said earlier, if you'd asked me last year, my answer to that question may not have been the same. And I'm enjoying being able to look back on some of the anxieties that I have overcome and being able to use that realization to know that there are anxieties that I have now, which I'll also be able to overcome. And that
Yeah,
is reassuring.
yeah, the things that you worry about, there's always something to worry about, but there's always life to keep on living too. So
That's right.
you kind of got to balance it and, use the worry to your advantage to make yourself better so you worry about less. You've gotten out. It sounds like you're doing very good, happy with life, doing well in practice, both someone else's practice and going into your own. This is the question that I've been wanting to know. Did you learn anything from your rotation with me that has actually been helpful to you?
Uh, so many things, Dr. Glazer, so many things from from you know in the first days that I was there, learning about the podcast that you have and being able to. Yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but your podcast and other veterinary podcasts are one of the ways that I not only get through my day just to have something to do, but also I learn so much from. I have really developed the ability to listen to audio books and podcasts and actually pay attention to them in a way that I hadn't
Good,
been able to do before.
good.
Um, and then not only that, but being able to look at your business model and the way that you interact with people. And at this point, I've interacted with a lot of vets, and I'd like to say that, you know, all veterinarians have the best interest at heart, and I think most of them or all of them really do, but not all of them are as focused on that client-patient relationship with their veterinarian as you are. You really take that seriously, and I picked up on that quickly, and I really liked it. And not
Okay.
just that, but I learned how to float horse teeth from you. And
Yeah.
and when I got there, you said you'll have to do this 100 times before you're any good at it. And I don't think I've hit that 100 mark yet, but I'm on my way. And when I left your rotation and I went to my school's large animal rotation, there were a couple days where we floated horse teeth, and I got to be the one that showed people how to do it. And that was
Oh,
something that
excellent.
really made me feel good about it. And I wouldn't have had that if I had not gotten to come and work with you.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that because I mean, I hope all my students are getting stuff from the rotation because I enjoy the mentorship. I had a lot of people, I could go through a list of people who took time to help me. So I can't really do much to pay them back, but I can help the next group that's coming along. So I'm glad that that's working out. So yeah. So yeah, everyone at the clinic wants to say hi. I told them I was talking to you, and they're all like, "Yay! See
So
how he's
cool.
doing." So, anyone you want to thank for getting you this far?
There's so many people. I mean, and not the least of which would be you and all of the veterinary professionals that I've gotten to learn from. But probably, as far as that goes, I think I'd have to give a shout out to my dad on this one because his just dedication to taking care of animals, despite not being able to get a formal education about it, and the sheer number of things that he was able to learn and do, and that I was able to see, gave me confidence as a person who comes from a socioeconomic background that doesn't encourage the kind of upward mobility that I've gotten to experience. That just has been really powerful for me. He's always, the whole time I was in vet school, I'd come home and Dad would say, "Here's Billy, thinks he's going to become a vet, doesn't realize that his dad's the only vet he'll ever know," and and we always really enjoyed that one. And now that I'm a couple years out, he started to say, "Well, I think here in 10 years or so, you'll be as good a veterinarian as I am." And I hope that I'll be able to live up to that before too long.
Okay, yeah, excellent. I'm just going to say this because I think vets sometimes forget this. You might want to thank your wife.
That's the one. My wife and the lovely Wendell Floyd, who's only over a year old now and is
Oh,
absolutely full steam ahead. That boy is unstoppable, and I'm hoping to turn him into a vet, but he might become a gorilla instead.
he's got some time to decide, I think.
That's right.
I appreciate your time at the clinic too. But thanks for taking time for this interview. I feel like you've said a lot of things that probably other vets your age or even older need to hear. And hopefully this will help other people who are listening to the podcast out a little bit, just with perspective. And then I hope maybe, I don't know, 10 years you look back on this and be like, huh, and see where you've come a little bit from that too, because I'm sure your journey is there will be always some unexpected surprises along the way. Not
That's
necessarily bad, just unexpected.
that's right. I hope that in 10 years you invite me back for another one of these and we can do a compare and contrast because that
That
would be exciting.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Anything else you just want to say in general about vet medicine or life? Just we've got the podcast here. If there's something you think people just need to know, or other students your age or coming out of vet school need to know, that when you came out, you're like, I wish someone had told me this just to get me through the first few months.
Yeah, I had kind of the luxury of that I did have people saying some of the things that I think it's important to say, and some of those things are just the recognition, especially for newly graduated veterinarians, that that it is really going to be okay. And even though you've woken up this morning and your stomach just will not leave you alone, and the possibility of having to go and do an emergency surgery that you did not know was coming up, that you've never done before, and that you really don't know how to do, even though they showed you in that one lecture a couple years ago, and you're supposed to know how to do it, you're going to get through it because you've got that knowledge, you've got that ability. And once you've done it half a dozen times, you not only will you feel better about doing it, but you'll want to do it. And it's that, you know, having done something that you're uncomfortable with enough times that you really look forward to going and doing it. That's probably been the biggest thing for me. And one of the things that people don't talk about as much. And I think folks need to hear that.
Yeah, I think that's all good stuff and things that I probably would have liked hearing too. A month or two out when I remember getting into some stuff, and the first C-section I did was, well, the cow made it to market. That's a good thing.
It
Uh,
is.
but I remember being covered in blood and poop and
Yep.
everything else. And I got home and I was just standing in the shower wondering, is this the profession for me?
Yep.
And yeah, we've had C-sections have gone well since then. So it's one of those things. Getting through it sometimes is hard, but you've come this far, might as well enjoy what you've worked for.
That's exactly right.
Well, anyway, thanks again for joining us. And when you get your practice, or do you have a name for your practice yet? Just Parsons Veterinary?
It's officially called Pleasant Valley Veterinary Services.
Okay.
I had to plagiarize you just a little bit there.
That's
And
yeah, if you're near Carter County, Kentucky, look up Bill Parsons, Dr. Bill Parsons, and his Pleasant Valley Veterinary Service for your large animal needs. And you can meet the person we've been talking with today. I'm Dr. Nathan. Thanks for listening. I hope our discussions are valuable to you and aid in giving perspective. If you want to contact us, please reach out to theveterinarypodcast@gmail.com. You can find a complete list of the podcast episodes on SoundCloud. If you find this information helpful and want more content, please join our Patreon, patreon.com/theveterinarypodcast. And don't forget to follow our Facebook page, facebook.com/theveterinarypodcast. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope this information is helpful to you. If you do find it helpful, please like it, share it, so other people may find it helpful as well.